Welcome to another Wednesday as we combine Tuesday and Wednesday since they represent the same archetype. As we explored last week, and if you haven't yet, please check it out so it's easier to follow the themes we will explore today and later on. Last week we mentioned Odin, Ares, Hades, Mars, Mercury, Thoth, Hermes, Nergal as embodiments of this archetype. Now, considering the Hebrew calendar as the current month for them is Tammuz, let's take a look at this particular month and see what we can find. Wow, so they're actually at year 5785. So their system attempts to calculate the number of years since the creation of the world according to the Genesis creation narrative and biblical stories. Alright, so from a Sumerian god's name, see etymology 2. Let's take a look here. So Tammuz, the 10th month of the civil year and the 4th month of the ecclesiastical year in the Jewish calendar after Sivan and before Av. Etymology 2 from Sumeria, Demystifying, which means the true sun. So the Hebrew month, which is the 4th month, it's named after this Sumerian deity. Now, I've always known this Sumerian deity to be related to the underworld. In the myth, he's cast to the underworld by his wife Inanna, which we talked about on Friday. So Inanna is the queen of heaven, and there is a myth surrounding her marriage to Tammuz. And that myth actually holds parallels with the Abel and Cain Bible story. Also, the story of Adam and Eve is inspired by the story of Inanna and Tammuz. His Canaanite name is actually Adon, so you can see how similar it is to Adam. Dumuzi, known to the Sumerian as Dumuzid the shepherd. He's a shepherd god, and last week we talked a lot about shepherds and the shepherd's crook specifically, and how a lot of letters in the alphabet can actually be traced to the symbol and what it represents and its relationship to religion, kingship, and so on. So in the myth, Inanna descends to the underworld to visit her sister because her sister's husband died, so she comes to the funeral. She's killed, and 3 days after her death she goes back to heaven. And the story of Jesus is probably also inspired by this myth. So one key thing here is that she goes down to the underworld to visit her sister, the ruler of the underworld. And her sister is actually known as the Queen of Earth. So there is a pattern here that indicates in ancient times, Earth was recognized as the underworld. And this is also true in ancient Egyptian mythology, where Earth is recognized as the underworld. And then we have the myth of Osiris, where he is the lord of the underworld, and becomes associated with the lord of the dead after his death. Now, the name Osiris is a little bit difficult to track etymologically, but let's take a look at Os for an assumption. Os is an English word for God, related to the Old Norse term Esir, which refers to the principal gods in Norse mythology. Okay, so Os is the singular form of Esir. So Esir refers to gods as a group. So we have Os, and we have Osiris, and we have Osiris. Am I traveling too far to find these connections? Maybe. Now, the name Os relates to the Germanic rune Enzus, and that's an interesting one. Enzus actually means God as well, and let's take a look at the etymology. And then it points us to Hittite Asus, which means king. So obviously in the past, a king was seen as a god, especially in ancient Egypt. See this relationship very clearly, where the pharaoh is considered the son of God. And then we have the Hebrew word, since we were talking about the Hebrew calendar, named after Tammuz. The word for horse in Hebrew is sus, Pegasus, which refers to a horse. We have Jesus. I think that is a pretty interesting connection, since Jesus is said to arrive in a horse, and in Christianity he is considered the Messiah, so Mess. And as we discussed last Wednesday, Mercury has the role of a messenger, so bringing this theme back and connected to Jesus as a Messiah and a messenger. So Jesus, according to my etymology, would mean God's horse. That's so funny. So in the old times, usually a king would send a messenger on a horse. God would send his messenger on a horse. So Jesus. So on Monday, we talked about Mani, the moon god, and he's associated with a chariot. He rides a chariot. So we're talking about Pegasus and Ensus, the Germanic rune meaning God, which holds close relationship with Odin as well, which is the main god in Germanic mythology. So let's take a look at Odin and his horse. So he's associated with a horse that has 8 legs. This pattern is also present in the ancient Greek sun god Helios, who rides a chariot with 4 horses. And he also continues with the Roman sun god Sol, also riding a chariot with 4 horses. Also the Hindu sun god Surya, this time riding a chariot with 7 horses. And since Surya's chariot has 7 horses, like the weekdays, and we're talking about esoteric things, let's take a look at the tarot card number 7. We have the chariot, and here we have this figure and elements of ancient Egypt. So we have 2 sphinxes here. Now back to the Lord of the Underworld archetype. To me, it exudes toxic masculinity. So let's take a look at toxic. Borrowed from French toxique, from Latin toxicus, which means poisoned. From Latin toxicum, poison. From ancient Greek toxicon, from pharmacon, which is something that we actually discussed last Wednesday. If you haven't yet, please check it out. That's how we're gonna link the dots and be able to draw the big picture. From toxicus, pertaining to arrows or archery. From toxon, bow, investigate bow. Possibly a cognate of Latin Texas, or borrowed from Iranian, compare Persian Texas, crossbow. And then we take a look at Texas, and related to Taxidon, just said on the first place, from Old Persian taxa, arrow from Proto-Iranian taxa, meaning bow. Ultimately from Proto-Indo-European tak, to run. Just sprinkling some key words that we'll explore as the chariot opens up a golden pattern for us, whether we're talking about concepts of karma, cars, wheels, chariots, horsepower, things related to that. If you care, you can jump into this chariot and it will carry us through time and take us on a very interesting ride. Now, to close this circle and keep the wheels going, since we were talking about the Lord of the Underworld and we already mentioned the chariot card, let's take a look at the 13th. So here again we can see a horse